Okay, and we're back, and it's time to spend an hour this week with Micheal Collins and get a good look at what's happening here and, of course, over in Japan. The open wound on the surface of the Earth, which continues to spew radioactive death, unfortunately, at a level that is still now being finally understood by the greater portion of the Japanese people and the American people as well. Hello, Micheal. Welcome back. How are you?
Hey there. How are you, Jeff?
See, you've always got more energy than an excited electron on a cesium-137.
I'm faking
isotope.
it.
You are. Well, you're doing a good job.
Well, you got to do what you got to do. Here we got a show. I've got two pieces of good news, and the rest are bad.
Yeah.
So I might as well have energy because who knows how much longer it could be kicking around, and we get kicked around. As we both know, get kicked around. And we're coming up on this 1-year anniversary of Fukushima.
Yeah.
And, oh, boy, have
TEPCO,
we as a people been kicked around.
TEPCO still doesn't have a clue after a year, nor are they going to next year. They are, this is the most obvious example of the frailty of the human condition. Not that we're stupid technologically. We built this junk. But it's junk. We could have built much smarter, much wiser long ago. But people don't care about that. When you have a technology that will produce electricity for 40 years, maybe 50 if they cheat, and they all do, and then you end up with radioactive waste residue that is deadly for 1 million years, how smart is that? How smart is that? Answer? It ain't. I mean, this is just unbelievably dumb. So that's where we are.
And you're going to hear a lot more about what a good idea it is now that gas is heading north of $5 a gallon.
Well, it's all
you're going to hear the nuclear industry and all their adherents come out and say, "Look, we've got to be energy independent, just like our companies or our foreign employee independent."
Right.
But actually, folks, we need this nuclear energy because of this gas.
Oh, we
got
have
a ton of natural gas and more desert than you could wave a stick at.
Never mind that not one single nuclear reactor has ever been profitable for out of well, let's just talk about the customers. They've always taken it terribly, a drubbing, a beating, a pounding. No profit in it except for the corporations running these horrible death-dealing white elephants. Now, here's the story. Let's go over to Japan first. This was written by our friend Bob Nichols. It's a very big story. Widely known physicist. This fellow's very widely known in terms of the whole Fukushima crisis, primarily. Not given a lot of press because he tells it too straight. Dr. Paolo Scampa. He is the publisher of the EU AIRPI blog and is an eminent chemical physicist. He announced today in his latest calculations of the deadly radioactivity in Tokyo itself that bad things, really bad things, are afoot. Both the nuclear regulatory and the media responses have been missing in action. Nobody's talking about Paolo Scampa, and they have done this virtually every time he has come forward with some announcements that don't sit well with the establishment. The story goes on to say, however, the outrageous statement of a Japanese politician pretty well sums up the level of understanding of the parasitic political class. Smile, and the radiation won't hurt you. Now, Tokyo, the suburbs, about 100 miles or 160 clicks south of the 6 destroyed, deteriorating, and badly leaking nuclear reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi station for nuclear power. All right, Dr. Scampa, here's what he said. An absorbed dose of 294 microsieverts an hour, 2.94, at 1 meter of soda, Let me just boil it down to basics. This is what Scampa is saying. A tragedy of enormous proportions. There are 30-plus million people in Greater Tokyo. It is brought home personally to each person who sees the work of Fukushima Diary by Mozichuki. And there are thousands of U.S. troops stationed with their families in Japan. They're going to be pulled out, by the way, folks. In case you hadn't heard, watch. They'll be all off the island of Honshu, probably within the next 6 months. American politicians must remove all U.S. troops and dependents from Japan immediately. This is what the Fukushima diary says. This must happen forthwith. We will remember. Mochizuki is sticking by his reporting at the Fukushima diary on the internet as long as he is capable. The bottom line is Tokyo has 25 times more radioactivity all over it than the evacuation zone at Chernobyl had. 25 times more radiation in Greater Tokyo than the mandatory evacuation zone at Chernobyl had. 25 times, not double, 25 times. And we saw the results of the number 1 train station in Tokyo. The radioactivity in there was overwhelming. It should be shut down immediately. Tokyo ought to be abandoned. 25 times above the mandatory evacuation level of Chernobyl, and they're still allowing people to live there. So, Michael, what does that mean for these people?
That means trouble, folks. There are 18,000 Americans living in Tokyo. There are about 6,000 more on the base in Tokyo Bay that has our nuclear aircraft carrier, USS George Washington. When you talk about these numbers, just want folks to remember that a lot of times we talk about multiples of background, but give ourselves some sense of relativity. That, this is 25 times background. Jeff is not talking background. He's talking the limit for Chernobyl. That you reach this limit in Chernobyl, got to go 25 times that limit in a city, a metropolitan of 30 million people. I just had to say that over again. And we got a report that train station, the one that I think you mentioned, on the ground, they found 6.5 millisieverts, I believe, an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that works out to be 541 times Los Angeles' background. That is high. Our background's about 3 times higher than it should be geologically and at this elevation.
Yeah.
And so in Japan, at this train station, 541 times background here in L.A., and you wonder, well, what were they measuring? Well, they're measuring the floor, and they hypothesize that, well, people have walked this radiation into the train. So not only are they...
Doesn't matter. It's also in the inside air conditioning system. It's being brought in from outside. It's not simply foot traffic, but that's okay.
That's right. I'll go with that, which is a good time to mention and to never forget, folks, that if you're getting on a plane, you ought to put on a mask. I don't want to get away from our subject, but do want to say that we've always talked about N95 masks. Well, there's another mask out called something 100, and Jen told me about it and sent me a photo of it, and I wish I knew the exact model number, but there are better masks out there. And so when you could try to knock down your radiation exposure, you put on these masks in planes, and you make sure not to get on planes that have Tokyo as the destination.
Right.
That's just not going to work. And what the thing about radiation, we always say, it doesn't have a barcode. TEPCO, the people that are responsible for this, the people that had the nerve to announce to the world that once this radiation leaves our property, we don't own it. Good luck.
It just amazes me. Just amazing. Yeah.
This kind of thing is they've got a leg up on us because cancer has a long latency period. But the fact of the matter is, we've had indications of it coming here to America, and we have to. There's so many different ways to talk about this. If we go back to Tokyo, you got to ask yourself, should we really allow 6 months? That Jeff said it might take 6 months to get our troops out of Honshu. I think that you might want to do it a little quicker. Problem is, with the...
Well, they should have been long gone. They should have been gone 6 months ago. The USS Ronald Reagan, as you remember, is probably still radioactive today. It threw so much radiation into that ship when it passed twice through the primary cloud of radioisotopes coming out of the wrecked plant of Fukushima within days of its meeting its end, that it came into that ship through every intake air duct, filled the entire ship. And they can't decontaminate that whole ship like that. No way. I'm convinced if you were to go through that ship right now, there would be a lot of hot spots in it. No doubt in my mind. But anyway. All right, hold on.
Makes you want to encourage any soldiers or sailors listening that if they were on those ships, the George Washington, or that ship, the Ronald Reagan, wouldn't it be interesting to have a nuclear radiation monitor and check out your ship?
I have a hunch
and a video camera.
I have a hunch that the captain wouldn't like that. Probably under orders to keep them off the ship. All right, hold on. Be right back with Micheal Collins of EnviroReporter.com in just a minute. Okay, back with Micheal Collins, and there's a lot going on over there. A couple of headlines from Fukushima as well. CBS News reports the Japan government basically collapsed during the nuclear crisis. That's not a real big surprise. They didn't know what to do. They were overwhelmed. They were actually terrified, and with good reason. Tokyo, again, 25 times the radiation right now that Chernobyl had for the mandatory evacuation zones. It's just amazing. This is death for these people. They're all dying. They're going to sacrifice an entire generation of Japanese to one degree or another to keep the lid on the reality. I mean, it's just amazing to me. Go ahead.
And you get it all sorts of different ways. We just find out that, well, we didn't just find out, but we had, in talking about our Navy, that one of our admirals reported 150 millirem an hour on March 20.
Right. Do sieverts. What is that in sieverts?
I believe it's don't test me on that.
When we get into millirems, we
factor of 100.
Yeah, we start losing people at rems. Unfortunately, it used to be the other way around.
That's true. Well, that's a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, sure.
That's good and plenty. And thing is, now we're coming up on a year anniversary of it, almost as if it were in the past. When you and I have discussed extensively that the longer something like this goes on, the worse it gets. And heck, you could point to the very few bits of information you get out of TEPCO and Fukushima Daiichi because they can't keep everything down. And why not tell you? I mean, in reactor number 2, since we last talked, it rose from 29 degrees Celsius to 50. Not good. You see, if one of these things goes fully south, so it's impossible to even get near the thing. It fries your electronics. I mean, you could see they're not getting in these buildings. They can't. We don't have the technology that can withstand this kind of radiation. We don't have the wherewithal to even know what to do about it. We don't know these things, and we didn't know these things when we started building them. Yet in the last month, with your taxpayer money subsidizing it, we've just okayed 2 new nuke plants.
Exactly. Well, not plants, reactors.
Reactors. You know, I mean, it's important we have these things. Germany decides to phase them out, we get more. We get more. And what you're going to get also, and you won't have to pay for this, it'll just take up your time, is now we're coming up on our year anniversary. And the media, of course, is chiming in. Now, we've got a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of pokers in the fire right now, and so we're working on some stuff, as you could well imagine. I will say that of all the media outlets in this country, mainstream or new media, there are very few that actually generate data you can trust because you can see it right in front of you filmed, which is what we do at EnviroReporter.com. But I'll tell you, already, we're getting things like this. Time magazine, they came out with a new study indicates nothing happened. And basically in this study that's on Times blog, Ecocentric, the study says, you know what? There was so little radiation that we almost couldn't measure it. We measured fish.
They're talking about Fukushima, folks.
Yeah. This is Time Magazine's blog talking about a new study about the fish near Fukushima. And they're testing these fish, and they are so cool, they are so unhot, that they're coming in just maybe 20% over background.
Right.
Normal background radius, just 20%. Isn't that something? Didn't we get ourselves all worked up over nothing? Is the tone. Now, that's just the beginning of it, because remember, we're still almost 2 weeks out. Then another, they did this back in November. Another test that said preliminary reports show, and they'll say in this study, as other studies I've seen like this that aren't peer reviewed, we went out, meaning that your fellow scientists or doctors look at your report as part of an organized body and say if you're full of it or not. Not peer reviewed these things, but basically we went and collected some fish. We didn't find anything in it. Now, you can take the hottest thing in the world and make it seem like it's not hot. Now, I'm not saying they jake the actual testing. What they do is they'll characterize it like, this is nothing. This is stuff that you just ingested some radiation from eating that fish, but that's no more than that 2-hour plane flight, so you're good. The numbers usually don't lie, but the interpretations do. And so we're going to see this in the media over the next week or two. And so I encourage people to cast a wary eye towards it, because it's obscene. It is. We have people who don't know what they're talking about, pontificating that there's nothing there, all based on wishful thinking.
Precisely.
And, you know, Jeff, when this disaster started, Denise and I, we're like down at Sears to get our HEPA filters, however you say it. Never
HEPA.
gotten that right. And we were amazed that there was nobody down there doing the same thing. And at that time, I said to her, you know what, this is going to be the first ongoing disaster that will worsen, that will cause untold misery, that will affect all classes equally. And she said, oh, no. You're wrong. The moneyed classes will be able to protect themselves better. They will be much better off because they'll have all these things to keep the radiation out of their food and their air and their water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, she was wrong.
Yeah.
Because everybody is just, stepped 1 foot off the skyscraper, held their nose, closed their eyes, tried to plug their ears, and took that step.
Yeah, that's true. Hold on, Michael. We have to pause on that. We'll keep that mental image falling for a couple minutes and be right back. Okay, back with Michael. And, of course, EnviroReporter.com is the place to go. And I hope you'll check it out often. All right, what's going on in Southern Cal? Well,
SoCal had some rain today, and we had a little bit of overage in radiation. We had a 19% over here in Santa Monica. The range of error on the inspector alert is plus or minus 15%, so it exceeded that, so it's a legitimate reading. These were based on a 10-minute count. That's not particularly hot, but this area here in Santa Monica is not impacted by so-called radon progeny or naturally radioactive gas coming out of the ground. So that's interesting. It was about the same, a little higher, at Radiation Station Glendale, which is also on our site in live time. And Dale Ramacone, who runs that, took a test of their rain. And so we ducked a bullet there. I think when the impact of airborne contamination, I think that we have seen a decrease Not that it's gone away. It's certainly in the atmosphere.
Well, it's certainly in the ocean too. Yeah.
Right, and we're going to see. But we have a great heightened amount in the ocean. I'm glad you brought that up, because ever since our article about buckyballs, our article Beta Watch came out. People have been very concerned who live by the coast and live on boats about contamination in the Pacific, and this new University of California at Davis report that describes the mechanism of the millions of tons of seawater that have been poured onto the molten fuel at Fukushima, as well as fresh water. And just as an aside, you can read about water problems on Jeff's site. One of the best places to go to get this kind of information is to go to Rense.com, because you'll see it right in the middle, and it'll give you the best stories. I mean, best being, relative term, because they are grim in most cases. But what we're seeing is we understand now the mechanism that this radiation comes across the Pacific. And people said to me, now, wait a minute, if the current, the second strongest current in the world, the Japan current, has a Japanese name, but we call it the Japan current, that's bringing over the debris and the radiation in the water. And make no mistake, folks, it's hot. They say, well, how could it have gotten here? I mean, if you do the miles per hour of the water moving and how long this has been going on, don't we have another year? Well, actually, yes, we do. We do have about another year because of the currents. But what has happened, and Jeff knows this, is because of fallout in the air attaching itself to storms and tremendous amount of fallout in the air. Forget the stuff that's going straight into the ocean, but going up into the air, it's going to come down in these huge storms over the Pacific and leapfrog the current and get it here right now. And that's what we think we've been picking up, because there's no other explanation for it. And, you see the tests, and the EPA here in Los Angeles has had big spikes of beta radiation here. And no, they don't explain it. We explain what we're doing. They don't explain what they're doing. But I'll tell you, as we come up to this anniversary, you're going to see different things happen. One thing is we'll basically have either incompetence or untruthfulness displayed by official bodies that will tell you everything's fine. And one of them is the UN. And I might have mentioned this last time, but on January 31st, it came out that they basically said, we did a big study of Fukushima. There's no impact to be seen. It's really because the government was so good in getting those Japanese evacuees out of there, and because it's gone into the ocean and not on the people. These are childish statements to be made. But when you think about who's making them, the UN, and then they pushed the fact that they had a week-long meeting of 60 international experts in Vienna to assess this, that you could get 60 people, not a one in there to make a peep, maybe, that would agree to the notion that all this radiation going into the Pacific is, that's good. Well, that's good. Did make it over here. Well, number one, it did make it over here. It is making it over here, and it is cooking the Pacific. My opinion, the most beautiful ocean in the world, and it happens to be connected to every other ocean, and it happens to be the ocean that 44 countries border. So you're going to hear just incompetent kind of hooey like that. Then you'll hear other stuff. Now, this is going to be more the province of the media, because here's a way you present it in the media. Those last two things are timed. The way they were couched was this: we really ducked a bullet. Now, when you put that into an article, that's sort of the feeling that you put into the article. What you do is you play into the reader's feeling that something's really wrong here, something's dangerous, there's multiple meltdowns, something's really bad. and you say, yeah, there's something really bad, but it missed us. Not only do you seem to say something's really bad, but you also give the out, which is, but it's okay. So that's another way that you're, in the next week or so, going to see that stuff. Then you're going to see stuff that just boggles your mind. If, let's say, you went to the university it came out of, like this one from UCLA, where I went to school. Brain food study provides further confirmation that eating fish is good for you. Now, I don't know about you folks, but we have tested fish. We have tested fish that we have bought in Japanese stores, and it was hot, and that was months ago. And it's not getting any cooler now. And we have radiation that studies that we have gleaned from the United Kingdom and Europe, studies that talk about wave action and making mist on the ocean can blow radiation inland. And now we have this study that says buckyballs.
So they're actually, Michael, we have to take a break, but they're actually talking now about the wave action on the mist and the aerosolization of radioactivity and other particulate matter in the water. It's good to hear. They are talking about it. Where was the study? Where was the study done?
Oh, I have multiple studies. They are referenced in Beta Watch. Studies on the Irish Sea in the United Kingdom that measured for plutonium, cesium-137, plutonium-239, americium-139 in the Irish Sea, and they tested how far inland in Wales and in western Britain this stuff blew. And it blew up to 300 kilometers. What do you think of that?
Wow, right off the ocean.
Yep.
Wow. Okay,
just
hold on.
From the wave.
Gotcha. Wow, that's amazing. All right, stand by. We'll be right back with Michael in just a minute. Okay, back with Micheal Collins and EnviroReporter.com. You can see an online live around-the-clock radiation reading from Santa Monica, West LA, and a couple other locations as well. All right, keep going.
Oh, yeah. We're coming up to this anniversary. I've got even more of a motor mouth than before. But now I'm going to tie together what you were just asking about re-aeration of radionuclides in water to the last thing that people should take note of when they are aware of this upcoming anniversary of March 11th, that one-year anniversary of this triple meltdown, is that the number one tactic, the government and the media, not that the media is sitting around in cahoots going, we're not going to cover this. What they'll do is ignore it. And that's what you can't do, and you're obviously not doing it if you're listening to this show. So that's great. But they will ignore it. Now, Jeff and I have talked at times mystified about the University of Berkeley and their radiological air and water monitoring team, or BROM. And early on, when we started testing here at Radiation Station Santa Monica, which is now in excess of 1,500 tests, one of the fellows from this team wrote us and said that, I applaud you for your efforts to measure radiation and inform the public. This is definitely a needed service that you are providing. He goes on to sort of belittle it a little bit and then comes back to say, however, I could question the interpretation of your rain results for various technical reasons and would love to discuss them with you if you wanted. Basically, the levels in the rain and air from your radionuclides in Japan cannot be reliably detected using your method, and you are probably measuring natural radioactivity from radon progeny. So, you can we have Beta Watch come out. We talk about the production of buckyballs, uranium. We talk about these tests that I'll get to, about how it gets deposited inland, and I send this piece to this gentleman from BROM at UC Berkeley, and I hear nothing back. And so these are the folks that have, in their assessment of the radiological dangers posed by Fukushima, which is 0, according to them, have helped give the government a big pass on what's going on. Well, we don't give passes around here, and I think you folks don't either. And so let's talk about those buckyballs. This is what you were asking about, Jeff. In 2008, there was a report called Sea to Land Transfer of Radionuclides in Cumbria and North Wales, updating a previous investigation. They found that just incredible amounts of, first of all, they looked at what are we looking for, and they certainly were looking for plutonium, because along the Irish Sea, there's a place called Sellafield, and the British in 1947 said, we got to have ourselves an atomic bomb, and so we're going to do it.
The Sellafield facility is one of the most dangerous and crappy in the world. It's awful.
Oh, yeah. So what better place to test for if you have waves or chop out in the open sea creating water going into the air if it blow in? So one of the techniques they'd use is they'd take muslin and they'd stretch it out on a certain area, like 3 foot square meters. And I believe either rectangular or circular, but they would catch spray, and they would measure it, and it was going hundreds of kilometers in. There was different types of deposition according to the radionuclide, whether you would find it at 5 kilometers in or 10 kilometers in, how much you would have of it. Americum-139, cesium-137, and plutonium-239, as I mentioned, and also where it would be the most concentrated, how many centimeters underneath the soil. And this has been done in several different studies. They're all at Beta Watch. They're all linked. And you could see, there's the mechanism. Now, one might say, like the folks that I'm dealing with right now as I'm trying to get out our information, well, if that's the case, can you give us an example of, say, cesium-137 coming inland here to Southern California?
Yeah.
And the answer is, oh, yes, we can. We have a document here. It's a U.S. Department of the Interior document. It's a U.S. Geological Survey document, and it has tests through California, and they have here, this test was from 1 week, March 22nd, 2011, to March 29th, that they measured in picocuries per liter, cesium-137 at 39 picocuries per liter. The drinking water standard in this country is 3, so it's 13 times over that. They found cesium-134 at 7.3 picocuries per liter. That's over 2 times the drinking water standard for that one. They found in the air 240 becquerels per cubic meter of cesium-137 in this week, and 46 becquerels in a cubic meter of cesium-134. Not good. So let's come back to radiation station. If that was that high at that time, and we had radiation station up on March 15th, did it show in our reading? Actually, it didn't. So what that means is no surprise here. Government has better equipment than we do. But what that also means, folks, is that everything you see us do, we're probably under-measuring. That means that everything that you see that we do, and we tell you how much is over and stuff, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. So, you know, when we finally put it together, took us 11 months, a lot of help, finally put it together. Okay, wait a minute, it's being made this way, it's moving over this way, it's getting in our country this way.
That's right.
And there's Zipola being done by the government about it.
Nothing.
Well, not good. Not
They're
good
not
at all.
going to do anything. The only people who are going to do anything are people like you and the others out there who have Geiger counters and who get online and share the data. That's it. No
That's
EPA.
it.
Remember what the EPA did in Boise? which picked up more radioactivity than any other location in America because of the way the weather currents came in and dropped down.
They went packing.
They packed up and moved out. They took their radiation detection devices out of Boise and trucked them away. Gone. That's the EPA for you.
That's right. So what can folks do besides take all the advice that we've been giving them about how to run their lives and stuff? Well, I'll tell you what you could do. You're doing it right now. You're listening to Jeff and support the outlets that are sustaining this information. And I'm not saying I got my hand out, give me money. I'm not. I'm saying this. When you have a chance to write comments, when you have a chance to participate in forums and in conversations on the internet, or when you talk to your friends, if you find this information important, share it. Provide feedback. We live on this stuff. And it doesn't cost anything, and it also gives us some great ideas. Now, we have a lot of folks that are freaked out about buckyballs. And, it is a downside of this particular story. I mean, if you're reporting on radiation and impending disaster, the disaster that's already reached our shores, it's never easy to do. Nobody wants to hear this stuff. I don't want to hear this stuff. I don't want to figure things out that say to me, whoa, you live about a mile off the ocean. What's that mean to you? None of this is pleasant. But I'll tell you, if you face it straight on, just like Jeff faces all these issues, all straight on, it is a relief to your psyche because you're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
You can look your kid in the face and say, hey, I'm doing something. There's hope. As long as you can do anything, there's hope.
Right. Yeah. Oh, totally agree. Yeah, we try and do that and stop twisting. The media is full of distortion, spin, twisting, the works. If you can just boil a story down to its essentials, present it to people straight on, and they can get an honest look at it without a lot of noise and obfuscation, they can usually come away with a pretty good idea, a grasp of what's going on. And that's just the idea of presenting something fairly, openly, and directly. It's exactly what you said.
I agree entirely, the greatest resource of this country is not the land and the minerals and oil underneath it or the forest on top or our agriculture or armaments. It's you people. You're the greatest resource. And the only way that we're going to have anybody who's going to have it together enough to maybe protect themselves to the extent that if this thing gets even worse, which it's going to, that we have some sort of hope for the future generations where people are taking care of their kids and actually looking at some of this stuff. How can I mitigate my exposure to it? And then also look at, what can I do about it? If you ignore it, it will not go away. And we won't go away either, folks.
No. In fact, Michael will be back next Monday, along with Yoshi Shimatsu, with our weekly report. Thank you very much for everything you do. EnviroReporter.com.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Michael. Give Denise a hug. Thanks.
We'll wait.
Okay, good night. All right, there we go, off and running, and only, 2 days left in February, gone. January, February, gone. All right, tomorrow night, Jeffrey Smith will be here. Dr. Bill Deagle, Frosty Woolridge, lots to talk about then, for sure. Okay, take care. Thanks for being here. Have a great night and a good day tomorrow.